titled The Use of Tools to Enhance Feedback to and from Students. When we say feedback, there's always lots of jargon that we use in education around feedback. Anyone want to take a guess what feedback literacy is? Okay, ability to understand, solicit, and apply feedback for your personal and professional development. So the reason we put all of these terms up there is I think in some of the presentations, we'll be either explicitly or implicitly referring to some of these terms about feedback. We'll be talking a lot about the various tools which improve or enhance feedback. How do we place all of these tools on a 2x2 axis? So this is some of the various types of feedback systems that we have in NTU.
I'm Wenli from NIE. I'm from the Learning Sciences and Assessment Academic Group of NIE, so I'm the learning scientist. What I'm going to share with you is about the peer feedback engagement of the students, which I have designed and implemented in my own class and also in my research project in the K-12 schools as well, referencing to Preman's framework. So my talk and my area's work, actually, it is on the right below area of this quadrant, which is about the micro level feedback to individual students and teachers. So as we all know, from the learner's perspective, we are getting feedback from multiple resources. So for example, from the teachers, from the peers, and also when we're engaged in technology, supported learning environment, and we also receive the feedback from the technology, from the tools. Okay, so what I'm going to focus actually is about this learner's feedback engagement. So feedback is just a feedback. What matters is really about how students, after receiving the quality feedback, how they reflect about the feedback and how do they acting upon. So again, now I'm going to share with you this kind of a circle. Actually, it's called a feedback loop. Feedback loop means we won't just stop at receiving or providing feedback. The second part is we need to analyze and reflect about the feedback. The third part is about acting upon, right? So from drawing those insights shared in the learning sciences and assessment literature, so there were, feedback is a very complex construct with 3 components: feed up, feedback, and feed forward. Feed up means we need to let students know what are our learning goals and how they will be assessed at the end, so the measurement part. Feedback is about we need to provide feedback on what they have been achieved. Feed forward is about those kind of information which help them identify the areas for improvement and inform them about the next course of action. In my research project, we are designing various pedagogical models to help students learn in more collaboratively and more effectively. And we also develop some technology tools to help students learn better. The role of technology is not just about providing analytics as the feedback. Actually, it can scaffold students if it is able to embed some kind of pedagogical design. For example, this is our peer feedback module. So students, they can provide a peer feedback on the overall artifact created by their peers, right? Then it may pop up some kind of so-called reader map. Then the reader map actually, they have to understand all those kind of rubrics. Then they give the rating for their own things. They receive the rating from the peers and also from the teachers. So as you can see here, actually we've already tried our best to make our learning analytics in line with our assessment criteria indicated earlier. So in terms of argumentation, we do have producing a lot of frequency count in terms of number of the claim and evidence. If they have too few numbers of evidence, which means it may not be very completed. And we also provide indicators for structural completeness of the argumentation. So if they only have one claim, we give them one green apple, a bit sour, right? So later they add one evidence supporting it, it becomes red, and they keep adding more evidence for or against this claim. At the end, it becomes a golden apple. So all this, actually, this is just our technological design and pedagogical design. But next, let me explain to you in our pedagogical design, how we do the feed up, feedback, and feed forward. Feed up is about what are the learning goals and the criteria for success, which they will be measured and assessed at the end. As you can see here, at the beginning of the activity, the teachers either show this rubrics, or maybe the system make this rubrics available and make it explicit. Students need to go through this rubrics before they engage in any learning activity. And on top of this kind of a cognitive rubrics, we also have what is the ideal situation for your social network analysis. If your social network analysis is on the left, which means you have one people dominating the whole discussion. If you are on the far right, which means your groups has been split into two sub-teams, you are not working with each other. So the one in the middle usually is more desired. So once the students, they get this kind of feed up, they know what they need to do and they know what is expected from them. And at the end, they will be assessed in this. Then in terms of feedback, actually we are trying to see how we are going to scaffold the students to provide quality constructive feedback. In terms of feed forward, so we are looking into students' reflection and uptake. So after receiving the feedback from the teachers, from the students, or even from the technology, what should I do? So we also provide a lot of guiding questions for them. The guiding question could be, is this comment relevant? So to what extent do I feel this is very valuable? How am I going to act upon? Do I need to address all the comments? If I decide not to, why? So we are trying to using this kind of guiding questions to push students trying to go for higher order thinking and critical thinking. And at the end, they need to act upon. So actually, technology enhanced augmented feedback can play a lot of roles in motor learning and skills learning. For example, this is one of my PhD students doing project. He developed some kind of interactive, immersive VR environment to teach novice learners about fencing. We use motion capture system to provide a real-time, very accurate analytics and feedback to the students. And there are two types of feedback. One is called a knowledge of a performance, and the other one is called a knowledge of a result. So knowledge of result means they are looking at some kind of result of action. For example, you missed the target area. So we are telling the learner you missed that. And we also provide feedback on knowledge of performance. For example, just now, you need to lower down your arm. So we are providing this kind of feedback, both KP and KR. And in this research, our finding is actually the accuracy of this kind of a technology support analytics could be even better than some of the human coach. They are not looking at every single action. They are trying to provide feedback after 3 minutes or 5 minutes. They summarize. But this kind of thing, they give real-time feedback. So the learners immediately know what they need to adjust in their next action.
Thus far, across the many years, we have been relying on reactive strategies to identify students who are really in need. We always wait for results to come out. Then we say, hey, this student needs help. Either results which has just been released, or we track the number of medical certificates that they have submitted. It also requires a lot of resources. So our poor admin staff have to churn out reports, and then our student care managers have to look at the report, look at the trends, and then decipher whether this student is on a downward trend and is it the right time to come in to provide that kind of support. So really, for the past, I would say about 7 years or so, I am very blessed to have worked with a team of PhD students and researchers to develop predictive models that looks into prior examination performance of how students perform in NTU in order to predict how they will do this semester. And we release the prediction scores in week 1 or week 2 of the semester so that active intervention, preemptive intervention can kick in to see how best to support the students. With regards to things like examination results, whether students have taken medical leave of absence, and really look for patterns. Of course, the machine learning will do that for me. My job is to formulate the problem and the models, and then the machine learning will take over. Any insights that is derived from the machine learning model will be pushed to the dashboard for the student care managers to look at. And of course, underpinning all this is the data governance framework, which really dwells into data ownership, who owns the data, data accessibility, access control, who can access control to such private and sensitive data, and as well as the data quality assurance. So this is what you get when you start to log in. We have this number of students. The information here, the data here is real, except that the student ID, the names have been changed. We actually piloted this program with a few schools. Let's say, for example, I'm interested in third year students, and I'm just going to look at, for example, predicting students' performance based on their CGPA drop over the last few semesters. So in this panel, we can actually see that the students will be ranked according to what's the likelihood that they will be at risk of failing a particular course. We like this feature, ranking, because in a lot of deployments, schools have very limited resources. So this is where ranking helps them to effectively decide how much resources they are going to allocate to reach out to the students. In this panel, it will list down what are the causes that they will be predicted to fail. The higher the score means the likelihood of failing a particular course will be high. So let's select, say, for example, one of the students. You can see that he's most likely going to fail quite a number of courses. And what's interesting about this dashboard is that it allows the student care manager to explore data, to explore previous trends in order to determine whether the prediction can be trusted. We cannot just trust any prediction by the machine, right? And we relay this to the student because it's perfectly fine for students to challenge us on what basis do you think that this prediction is accurate. So true enough, you can see that the blue line over here shows the semester GPA trend over the last few semesters. The purple line shows the global average, the cohort average. This student is clearly struggling, and if you look carefully, something has happened over the last semester. This is the impact on the cumulative CGPA. So anything below 2 is the hard threshold where the student cannot graduate from NTU. And clearly this student is in need of assistance. Another panel which is really important is the lower right panel, where the orange bar shows the number of medical certificates that over the course of I don't know how many semesters, this student has taken 19 MCs. 12 failures, D+, these are the SU options that he, she, or they has declared. So it is this kind of information which is really very useful. So over the last couple of years, we have completed trials across 5 schools with more than 9,400 students, over 150 courses, all thanks to my team, Siong's team, CITS team. And what is interesting to point out that not just releasing the dashboard to the student care managers, we also attempted to do some form of a triage so that we can provide initial assessments to the student care managers. Are the students struggling because of existential circumstances, or is the student weak generally in terms of academic ability? And of course, once triage is done, then the intervention support can follow. So we thought that this kind of feed-forward information will be very useful for people on the ground, not just for instructors, but also policymakers as well as student care managers to do a better job in providing support for our students.
So our definition is really the collection of student learning history, needs, preferences, behaviors, outcomes, and experiences. And these can be quantitative and qualitative data that you collect. And then we try to analyze this data using some statistical, machine learning, or data mining kind of approaches to actually gain actionable insights at the micro, meso, and macro level. So when I say micro, it's very much like what Wenli was actually sharing is within the class environment. At the macro level, meso level would be pretty much like what Andy is actually sharing, because it's for a program. So you want to identify who are the students who might be at risk in the coming semester. So that's at the program level. But we also have analytics, which are actually at the university level, where we actually looked at which school perhaps are actually performing well and which are the schools that perhaps would need a bit more support. Why we have this particular Learning Analytics Center to begin with is because we have actually an NTU education strategy target that by 2025, that 50% of all program curriculum will adopt learning analytics for personalized learning. In the morning, we already introduced to you the NALA project, so I'm going to see the NALA project again from the lens of feedback. If you actually think about the AI tutor that we're actually developing, and as I mentioned, that students ask a question, they will get some information, but there will always be a follow-up question, and based on that actually triggers them to think a bit more deeper about the question, and then based on their responses, they get affirmative or corrective feedback. So in some way, the intention of such a board is to provide some form of immediate feedback to students to actually help address their own individualized needs, and then they get some of the attention. But at the same time, we provide some faculty analytics based on the students' conversation histories with the board. And hopefully what we are providing them then is really specific data and useful data for these faculty then to be able to give instructor feedback to the students. We are also planning a student analytics bot. So what actually it does is that it also take the student conversation histories and then it provides some information for the student themselves. So it could be, for example, we could provide information to students to say that, oh, throughout your sessions, you have been asking questions on topic 1, 2, 3, but you have not really asked any questions on topic 4. Or it could be that you have been asking that sort of questions like what questions, but not many types of why questions. The value of what we're trying to do is actually with analytics, that we have the data. Can we make use of data to actually translate into something useful and meaningful for faculty to give feedback to students, and for students to actually think about, oh, how am I learning and how can I learn better? So I just like to come back to the slide which Preman has at the beginning. When we talk about learning analytics, which I actually highlighted in green, I think that learning analytics really, what we are trying to do is actually to enable automated AI feedback systems or enable teacher feedback to students and students' own self-reflection. What are the challenges? It goes back to this. How do we know that the data that we have is actually of quality? What are the things that can be counted? Does it actually count? And so that it becomes something which is actually meaningful. And more importantly, once we give the information, do they have the feedback literacy to actually translate into actionable insights?